Let's talk about Spider-Man No Way Home. Hey there, film friends. Jonathan here, and I want to talk about Spider-Man No Way Home. I saw it on Saturday night, and oh boy, there's so much to talk about. I might be breaking this up into just a couple different videos. Right now I'm focusing, this is just gonna be broad strokes review and initial impressions, and I'm gonna start with a little bit of a general spoiler-free part of this review for the next minute or so, and then I'll dive into spoilers and specifics. So if you haven't seen the movie yet, you can watch right now, and then I'll make it really clear when I'm about to start getting into spoilers, and you can swing on out of here and go see the movie and come back. I'm going to come at this at first from just a filmmaker's perspective, because as an MCU nerd and a comic book nerd for most of my life, obviously I have a lot of impressions and feelings there. But even just as a filmmaker, I'm really impressed by what this movie has done. Impressive! This movie had so much that it set out to accomplish, and I feel like it accomplished the vast majority of it. And even the parts that it may not have quite hit the mark on, it came so darn close, I struggle to find what those are. I mean, the cinematography was pretty great. The VFX, obviously, there was a lot going on here. They couldn't all be perfect with as much as there were, but VFX were great, and even when they weren't great, they worked. So many great actors, so many great characters. If you've seen any of the marketing materials at this point, this is not a spoiler to say that Alfred Molina comes back as Doc Ock and Willem Defoe is back as Green Goblin. Those two actors back on screen, doing, I think, better jobs even than they did before, in my personal opinion, like getting so much more to work with for their brief amount of time comparatively, you know, since they're not headlining their own movies, but they still got to do so much. And then, of course, Tom Holland, Zendaya, everybody there does just as good a job as they've been doing before. I think the most impressive thing about this movie, 100%, was the writing. Directing was great too. They brought what was on the page. John Watts did a great job bringing that to the screen, and everybody else did a phenomenal job. But just the sheer tightness with which this script was put together, just how effective it is for all the different pieces and people that have been crammed into it, is just mind-blowing to me. Sure, the pacing does drop off at different points, and it's not always a high the whole way through, but given what it was trying to do, I think that's okay. Writing was so good, in fact, that I think that might be a separate video that I touch on entirely. Let's start talking more specifics now. I'm gonna dive into spoilers at this point, so if you just wanted a brief review and you don't want anything spoiled, swing on out of here. Let's start talking about the things that I specifically liked. Highlights, plot, premise, all that jazz. Okay, since I already mentioned it, let's start with the plot and the screenwriting, just the story as a whole. Overall, this film draws, you may already know this if you're interested in Spider-Man at all and you've been following this, but it draws heavily from stories like One More Day and Happy Birthday. The writers and actors and producers, everybody involved with this, managed to take elements of a story that nobody really liked when it came out and make it a story with just so much heart and so much going on for it. So just like every other Spider-Man movie, or MCU movie for that matter, it gets pretty quippy here and there. But throughout the entirety of this movie, even after, again, spoilers, even after Peter's name specifically has been cleared, at least by the law, this script managed to give us more depth and heart out of Tom Holland's version of Spider-Man than we've ever seen before. It managed to almost perfectly capture and even build upon 5 previously used villains that a lot of us thought we'd never see this way again, and give some of them, like, in my opinion, Green Goblin and Doc Ock, even more great moments and build upon their own themes even better than before, and even redeem certain moments or build upon the themes and lessons learned by, again, spoilers, previous Spider-Man. For Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man had really great moments to shine. And everything that happened, big or small, served the story. So, covered story, characters. Mentioned it before, I'm going to mention it again. We got so many great character moments and character development in this movie. This movie managed to bring back both the greatest and the not so great villains. We got to see freaking Doc Ock and Norman Osborn, two characters who never interacted in the movies, so far as I recall. No, they didn't. They didn't interact. We got to see the two of them play off of each other, and we got to see what really separates the Green Goblin and his kind of split personality and the sort of split consciousness of Doc Ock. How the one was able to be redeemed and the other had a much harder time with it, and just the pure evil of Green Goblin. Just everything about that, man, was so good. Willem Defoe is a freaking genius.
You know, I'm something of a scientist myself.
And let's just go back to the fact for a moment here that he did most, if not all, of his own stunts. That was his condition for coming back. This, I don't know, 60-year-old man, and he's in the most brutal, visceral fights with Spider-Man that we've ever seen. I would argue they were more visceral than his final fight scene in the original Sam Raimi film that he showed up in. It's the most Green Goblin that we've ever seen him be, again, in my opinion. I mean, when he's getting bashed in the face by Spider-Man in their first real fight, and then again later, and he's smiling more and more as it happens. Just the maniacal genius of Willem Defoe, truly bringing that comic book Green Goblin to life. Magnificent! And even characters like Sandman, Lizard, and Electro got a little bit of a time to shine here. Obviously, Lizard and Sandman didn't get quite as much of it. Now, Electro, though, may have been, I mean, not my favorite character, and not my favorite moment even, but my favorite change and sort of retcon and fixing of something that people didn't like. Because I don't think I know a person who enjoyed the previous incarnation of Electro from The Amazing Spider-Man 2. And then this movie comes in, and within just a couple of lines, granted, nebulous lines, where probably some of the shakier, not even shaky, but just less firm writing in the film, manages to take that and make it a character that's so much more fitting for both Electro and Jamie Foxx. He actually becomes intimidating and interesting. It's just so fantastic to see what they could do with them. And then, of course, Tom Holland is doing an amazing job in this film. You feel the gut punches that he's getting throughout this movie, especially the fantastic bit of acting that we get from Marissa Tomei as Aunt May in her most tragic scene. I'm not going to spoil literally everything, but I'm sure you know what I'm talking about if you've gotten this far. And then, of course, there's the big elephant in the room. We got the other Spider-Man. Everybody said we were going to do it, except for, of course, Andrew and Tobey. Everybody knew it was coming. We all were convinced it was going to happen. And yet, the way that they managed to bring those characters in still was surprising. I never would have thought of it. The bread scene is just one of my favorite scenes in a Spider-Man movie, in a Marvel movie, and honestly in movies in general, because they managed to not just exploit nostalgia, but really go in and embody these characters again and give them something new to do and a new purpose to be there. They weren't just cameos, they weren't just there as fan service, they really served the themes and the character progression. Probably my favorite redemption of the movie is Andrew Garfield's. There are a lot of problems I had with the Amazing Spider-Man movies, of course. It's definitely still not my favorite series, and he's not my favorite Spider-Man, but just the way that they redeemed his character and allowed him to redeem his biggest mistake in losing Gwen Stacy just really hit me. Really loved it. Fantastic stuff. You know, I feel like in a review I need to give some complaints, and maybe I'm biased, but I'm just having a hard time finding any with this one. Sandman is a little bit of a sticking point for me. That felt like an unnecessary heel turn when he went from, I'm going to help Spider-Man out, to, yeah, now I'm not. And you know, there were a couple other slightly weaker elements throughout. Obviously, the plot as a whole, as big as it is, if you think too hard about it, you're going to find a lot of plot holes. But I'm not going to hold that against a big sci-fi magic plot in the first place. You know, on the note of things that didn't quite jive with me, I love what it did for the story, but I also wasn't really a big fan of Ned's sudden use of magic. I feel like it came too easy for him. I know it had to happen fast because of the movie, but I don't know. It might just be nitpicking at this point. I'm not saying this was a perfect movie. Obviously, you know, it's a little bit on the long side. You may not love Tom Holland even after this. Or maybe you do. But it's as close to perfect as I think this concept could have gotten. I'm definitely giving this one, in my books, I never give a 10 out of 10. I'm going to say 9.5 out of 10. But it's just such a good movie. This film left Spider-Man more at his roots than this version of Spider-Man has ever been. I've never been a hater on this version of Spider-Man and Tom Holland's performance and the Tony Stark aspects of it, but this really brings him back to roots and true to form, and I'm excited to see what's going to happen following this film, both for Spider-Man and for the MCU going forward in Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness and all of that jazz. Anywho, that's my spiel. Like I said, I'm probably going to put out some more videos. I'm at least probably going to do one specifically on the writing in this film. In the meantime, thank you for watching this review. If you're subscribed already, thanks so much for subscribing. If you haven't subscribed to my channel and you liked this video, definitely please go ahead and like the video down below, subscribe to the channel for future videos, and ring that little alert bell so that YouTube may or may not let you know when new videos come out. I'm going to try and do more reviews, more videos, and release my new short films as the months progress, and especially in 2022. Again, if you're still here, thanks so much for watching. I appreciate it, and I'll see you next time. Keep telling your story. Cut.